Hello again, and happy 24th day of Pride Month. We are back. Today we are following up from yesterday's subject of asexuality and doing a Q&A.
Yeah, I've been urging Suzanne to talk about this a little bit more since she is asexual, and I see a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. So I'm really happy that you've agreed to do this, and we've gathered some questions. And I don't know, do you want to just dig in? You want to say more about?
Yeah, I think if you have a question while we're going through this, we'll feel free to type it in as a comment, and hopefully we'll be able to just catch it. And otherwise, yeah, I'd say just jump in.
Okay, so we've gathered some, and I'm just going to shoot them off at you.
Okay.
And see what you got. All right. What does being asexual mean to you?
Okay, so I think the most common understanding of it is that asexual people don't feel sexual attraction. There's a lot of variety in asexual experience, and some asexual people, I think, also don't feel any. Some people feel physical desires, but not really attraction, and some don't. So yesterday we were talking about, there was this anonymous quote about asexuality being, if you imagine a donut, that some people, when they see donuts, they're like, wow, I really want to eat that donut. And some people are like, yeah, it's a donut. And so my experience, my sexual identity is that I don't really, if I see a person who is, other people would find hot, I don't have a sexual attraction to those people. I can recognize intellectually sexiness. I understand what sexiness is. I get it, but I don't have like a physical response to that. So that's my form of of asexuality, and I think it's kind of common is that it's associated with sexual attraction.
Okay, we got another one. How do you feel about sex? Does it disgust you?
No, it does not disgust me. My relationship with sex has been complicated throughout my life, and I think we've got some topics that are going to touch on that a little bit more. Being asexual doesn't mean that you necessarily don't like sex, or that it doesn't even mean that you don't have sex. It just means that you don't experience sexual attraction and have the same sex drives as other people do.
Okay. Ready to move on?
Yes.
Do asexuals enjoy sex?
I would say that the people who are asexual who do engage in sex, for the most part, do. It's that we'll take that donut analogy again. If if a plate of donuts is in front of me, I might be kind of like, meh, I don't care. But that doesn't mean that if I am eating a donut, I don't enjoy the process and the experience of eating a donut. So I think that also varies, though. Some asexuals don't want to have sex at all, and other asexuals might want to have sex for a number of different reasons, for relational reasons, for sort of maintaining their biological health. There's health benefits to sexual activity. And for bonding for a lot of different reasons. But so no, I personally don't find sex disgusting at all. It's not really about that.
Okay. Are you sad because you are an asexual?
That's a good question. That's a complicated question. I think I am not, primarily because of this beloved person right here. Like I said, sex has been a complicated issue for me throughout my life. I think it is for lots of people for lots of reasons. Sex is emotionally messy. It can be physically complicated. It can be difficult, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more too. But so it has never. It doesn't make me sad now because I know that people can have very fulfilling relationships, that relationships and life aren't driven by sex drives, and if they are, it's probably going to be problematic.
All right, we got another one. How long have you known you are asexual?
So this is an interesting question about the word known, right? I mean, my experience has been the same throughout my life as far as the lack of attraction and the lack of drive, like a physical drive. I think my physical drive is low. And so that hasn't changed. And so I guess looking back now, I have always known, but I didn't know what it was. So, ooh, sorry about that. So when I kicked our stand. There we go.
You gotta have something like that when you're going live.
So, blanking a bit about where I want to pick up. How long have I known? So I used to think that girls just didn't have sex drives. Like, well, obviously, like guys, I think that there are differences between the sexes, but there is variability between both, and there might be some stereotypes. But I just assumed that all females were like me, and that sex drive wasn't really there. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that I've started, and since we've been involved in the LGBTQIA plus community and researching and studying, that I've recognized that my reality is that I am asexual, and that what I just thought was like a low sex drive or was actually my orientation, my sexual orientation. So I've always known, and I've only recently known kind of both.
So we're just going to slow down a little bit and breathe. We got several questions to go through, so we might go a little bit over today what we usually do. But I'm really glad that you're willing to answer these. We want to get as many of these out as we can. All right, we got another one that says, why are you talking about being asexual?
Well, mostly because my Dolce thought it was important to. The implications on relationships is obviously strong. And it can have a lot of disruptive force without communicating and without awareness. I think that people's, this idea of spectrum is, and, the rainbow is a spectrum. And we recognize that, you've got gay people, straight people, bi people, kind of people in the middle. And when it comes to gender, different people are you could have a G.I. Joe or a Barbie, kind of similar polar ends, and all kinds of people in between. And so it seemed important to start talking about asexuality, which seems to get a lot less press. The numbers, the percentages, we're just hearing some things about like 1% of the population is asexual. I'm not sure if that's accurate or if it's a matter of people not recognizing what it is. I mean, just like I didn't know I was asexual until I started studying what it means. So it seemed like the time for conversation is good, and that the opportunity, that if there is more awareness and there is more conversation between people, it's liable to have less relational disruption longer term, and that there are implications for partners and spouses. And we might be talking about that again tomorrow more from, because I'd like to have my Dolce answer some questions about the impact that it's had for them, and how that all plays out. So that's why we're talking about it now.
All right, how do people react generally when you tell them that you're asexual?
Well, it hasn't been a topic of conversation. This is kind of the first time that we've publicly been talking about it, and it's not the kind of interactions that we have in day-to-day conversation much. We were at an event. I was teaching a workshop at a church a couple of months ago, and a woman came up, and they were talking to you, Dolce, I think, and you said, my wife is asexual, and this person said, oh, so am I, and she was so happy to be able to talk about it. And so I really haven't had much of a response. We'll see if I get more based on this conversation, I think.
And her husband, if I remember, and they
And her
talked about
husband was
support
there.
groups, so
Yeah.
that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah. I wish we'd stayed in touch with them, actually. I
Seriously, I
lost
know.
her email.
Okay, was it strange to be a teenager in our hyper-sexualized culture?
Yes. Well, sex has been complicated, as I said, for me. And I organized losing my virginity because all my friends were, seeking out sex, and you're teenagers and you're hanging out, and so I orchestrated it with a friend to hook up with her brother so that I could lose my virginity. It was very calculated intellectual exercise and not at all enjoyable, I might point out. And then throughout, as I got a little bit older, and I ended up having a long-term boyfriend who ended up being my husband, and sex was always the way I understood how to make connections with males, and males were the focus. My relationship with my dad was not particularly healthy, and I think that I sought male attention in a negative way, and sex was always part of that method. So, and my relationship with this guy who was my boyfriend, who became my husband, we started dating when we were both very young, and our relationship was unhealthy in a number of ways. And I ended up, both of us were cheating on each other. I ended up cheating on him a number of times, and it ended up being the sexual part of it for me was always about was about the connection, and that's how I understood connection to happen. It was never about me wanting the sex. But I think that that's what our culture does, is that we train up people, regardless of your orientation, whether you're asexual, whether you're homosexual, whether you're heterosexual. We're kind of raised to have sex be such a focus of relationship that it becomes problematic regardless of where you are on the spectrum. It becomes, I'm not saying it isn't important. It is very important. Sex is very important to relationships, but I think that it ends up getting kind of falsely elevated or unhealthily elevated, I guess, that the focus is just misplaced. I might have rambled on a bit there. I'm not sure I answered that question very well.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Thank you for being honest and vulnerable with people. It's important.
I love you, Anne.
I love you. So, here's one. Do you think maybe you just haven't met the right person yet?
Oh, I've definitely met the right person. Let me just point that out. Yeah, it's never been about a person. I've had I've had sexual partners who the sex was very satisfying, mutually. I think mutually satisfying, and mutually. I mean, some really bad many really bad sexual experiences, and some pretty good sexual experiences, and it's definitely not about the person. I think I've written a couple of books now on the subject of sexuality and desire, theology of desire, and now sex with God, because I think that I am weirdly a very sexual being while being asexual, which seems like an odd combination, but I think that the best sexual relationships we have are with the people that we are most intimate with, and physical intimacy is not necessarily true deep intimacy. Hopefully they go hand in hand. They should. In the healthiest relationships, that's what happens, is that the two are both there. But you can be sexual with someone and not be intimate at all, not have true intimacy. And so, what was the question? I forgot what the question was.
Do you think you haven't met the right person?
Oh, right. Okay. So, with my Dolce, there's the highest degree of intimacy I've ever experienced in every form. And she is they are definitely my person. There is no question about that. But that hasn't changed my sexual attraction. I still don't find myself, it's not like if someone walks by, I'm like, ooh, look at that. I want to tap that. That's just not how I work. It's not how I was made. It's not how I tick.
I like that answer. And I didn't pay anyone to send that to us, by the way. Okay, we got another one. Do asexuals want to avoid being in relationships?
So there is asexuality is a sexual identity, and it has nothing to do with romantic attraction or the desire to be in relationship. So some asexuals are also aromantic, meaning that they're not interested in close relationships, and sometimes it gets tricky because most people, sex is such a key part of relationship that they don't know how to function. They don't know how that it couldn't work, or they don't know how, more accurately, they aren't able, the intimacy level isn't there at a high enough level that they can work through a system where it's mutually satisfying and healthy. And so avoiding relationship can be the easiest thing to do. It's just, I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to make someone feel disappointed, or I don't have to kind of put up with having sex if they really, really don't want to have sex. Again, it's a range, but in this case, people who want relationships, there's like a romantic spectrum, just like there is a sexual attraction spectrum, and many asexuals definitely do want to have romantic relationships. They just don't find themselves sexually attracted to people.
Okay. Why are asexuals called ace?
It's just shorthand. It's just a what abbreviation, I guess. But I like it. Ace. It makes you sound really good at something.
All right. And we got a couple more on here. Here's one. Are asexuals oppressed like other members of the LGBTQI plus community?
Yeah, well, so it's a little bit different because it's not very public, right? I mean, asexuals could have partners of the same gender, opposite genders, whatever. It's sub rosa, so people don't necessarily know it. So the ways that the problems rise up tend to be more one-on-one, or you get people trying to tell you things like, oh, you just haven't met the right person yet, or I can fix it. You just, let me have sex with you and you will no longer be asexual. And, sometimes it sounds funny, but sometimes it crosses over into rape because the people are like, oh, you're not attracted to me, I'll show you. So it's not as, I think it's not as in your face as some of the other kind of discriminatory views and actions, but yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that happens.
All right. Are asexuals born that way?
I would say yes. Just like, if you know that you're attracted to boys when you're 12, regardless of what sex you are, and I think it's there. It's just kind of who you are.
Okay, we got one more here. What's one thing you'd like people to know about being asexual?
So there's nothing wrong with you. There is this concept of spectrum and difference. It's a range. There's people's drives and their attractions and their gender expression. It's all a beautiful variety and range. And if you're asexual, you can have a very healthy relationship with someone else. And I just urge you to work on communication about it, early communicating. If sometimes you don't know. With me and with us, it's been a journey of discovery, and that afterwards it all makes sense. But there's nothing wrong with you, and you are beautiful just the way you are, just like we've said about all the other topics that we've talked about. God created you as you are, and you are fully capable of having deep, meaningful relationships on any level, including a sexual level, if that's what you desire. If you don't want to have a satisfying, if you don't want to have a sex life at all, that is fine too, and you can live a completely healthy, full life. And if you do want to have a sex life, there are ways to communicate with your partner to make that happen, to make it work. So I guess that's what I would like people to know.
Okay, I don't see any more coming up. Do you see any coming up?
Nope, nothing came through on the screen.
All right.
Any last thoughts from you?
Well, I think communication is key. You were hitting on that in the last few things that you said, and it's been really important with us. I mean, I've had to ask you a lot of questions, and sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable, and you're a little scared to ask those questions, but there's no other way to know unless you open up and communicate. And I think we're blessed to have a really good level of communication between the two of us. And I love our relationship. I love that you're asexual. I love who you are. It's part of who you are. If I didn't like that and I didn't help you blossom into all of that, then you couldn't be all of who you are. And I think that's what we have to do for each other wherever we are. Whatever we like, who we are, we have to be that person. And the bottom line is communicating that to your spouse or your partner. That's about who you are, I think. And I think you've done that really well. I think really if we look back, we kind of knew. We just didn't know what the term was. You know, so we just kind of worked through and you figured out the term, and you were able to claim that and to come out public and say it is really important, I think, because I see a lot of prejudice and ugliness towards asexual community, and it's wrong. It's just wrong. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean you attack it. My beloved is most loving, sincere, kindest person in the world, and just part of her is that she's asexual. Yeah, so I hope that changes, and I think the only way it does is for people to speak out. So I'm really proud of you for coming out and claiming who you are and speaking up and being vulnerable to answer questions and be honest. I love you.
I love you too. And, you know, you're the reason for that bravery. I wouldn't have... it doesn't even feel brave because they just make me feel so comfortable. So I'm grateful. And Paul, hi Paul, thank you. I'm glad that you were able to come. And Paul says dating is hard for me, so I just want to address that. If I had known that I was asexual in the overt way that I now know that what it is that I'm asexual, I think it would totally transform the whole dating process, because I can only imagine. I hear you. I don't know. I can imagine what you mean by dating is hard, because there is such a high level of expectation about sexual behavior. Sorry, we've got Philip making his presence known
done
again.
with his peanut butter bone.
Yeah. So anyway, there's such a high expectation for sex, and I'm sorry that that is hard for you, and I hope that you find ways to communicate that early on. Maybe it's got to be so uncomfortable, and I don't have any advice for you on that, but I'm going to be I'll be thinking about that, because I would imagine your experience is far from unusual.
I know. I watched a video with the person who started asexuality.org, and he talked about being in relationships with friends, and when it started to become that relationship became more, they were just spending more time together, and that's what I mean by more. He said to them, it's time for us to sit down and talk about this relationship. You know, what it is, what it won't become, or what it will become. And I kind of liked that, because he said he did not become romantic with that person, but it sounded like he may have found people in the future that he did become romantic with. But I like that he communicated that once he started finding that this friendship was becoming something that was occupying a lot of his life and was making both of them happy. So let's talk about exactly what this is. Let's communicate where we are in this relationship, and where it might go, where it might not go. And to have that open communication, I think, would be important.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the sexual expectations, you know, I don't know how you deal with that part.
I think it takes a special relationship, but the only way it can work is through that honesty and working out system. You know, systems sound so cold and calculated, but in a way, it is a system to work out things that work. Just like, you know, if you're working, it sounds horrible. Just like if you have to figure out who's going to do the dishes, who's going to do the laundry. You know, if you need to work out a way of saying, let's have this time together to build intimacy and to be physical. It all takes a lot of communication. Let's see, someone else I just want to see if there's...
Any more questions?
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Stephen. He was saying it takes courage. I appreciate that. And Tracy's saying thank you too. I think that is it. We appreciate you. We're glad that you are here. It's been such a pleasure to be talking with you every day this month. And I think that if it's okay with you, honey, I would like to ask reverse things and do some questions to you about what it's like from your perspective, because I think that there's a lot to be learned there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that tomorrow.
We'll do that tomorrow, okay? So you guys take good care and happy Pride Month.
Be you.
Be you. You are beautiful.